Appreciate you coming in. It's good to have you on the podcast and kind of finally get you in here. We've been trying to kind of get something together for a while. I've been talking to, and if you've noticed, more bodybuilders, more people local to this area, and it's just been really cool to experience that, to become kind of part of the community.
And it's amazing how much of a community it is in this area and how popular bodybuilding actually is in this area.
Yeah.
When I first was around the sport, there was like one or two competitors that I even knew of, like in the gym, but now it's just a lot more. Of course, it's expanded because when I was first around, 2007 was when I first was introduced to the bodybuilding world, and there was men's bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding, and figure. That was it. So it's just grown with all the different divisions and just more interest in it, I think. I guess because of the accessibility, there's something for everyone, which can be good and bad. But yeah, it's more. It's just grown like crazy, and like I said, I don't know why in particular in this area, but it just seems like in the Louisville, Southern Indiana area, there's actually several IFBB pros here in this area, which is actually kind of surprising, but for just this still relatively small metropolitan area.
With the expansion, with all the new, bikini wellness, physique and all of that, what have you seen be some of the what's the right word I'm looking for here? The effects of that, because of obviously getting more popular and getting bigger, but what else have you seen because of that?
I just think it's more interest in the sport. I just maybe more acceptability in the sport. Because there's still that negative connotation of bodybuilding. These manly, the manly looking women and everything, and when people see, it's not all just this one little box. There's a wide range, the NPC, IFBB, they've kind of put their, once they took women's bodybuilding away for a few years, they want that femininity. The more, I think it's more marketable to people, and it's opened the door to people like, hey, there's a division for me. I work out. I train and everything, and that's an interest to me, but there's no way I could ever be a female bodybuilder. But, somebody who's little and tiny and petite, but there's now bikinis, it's been around for several years. And then there's the women who, I just have these natural, these athletes, like gymnasts, softball players, volleyball players. They have these just natural big quads. And they added the wellness division. And at first I was kind of like, I don't know about this, but honestly, that's one of my favorite divisions, the physique. I just think they're beautiful physiques that look like the Sunny Andrews. To me, Sunny Andrews is one of those people that she just has crazy genetics, but she also works hard. And she's one of those people that's to me, one of the best physiques in any of the divisions. Because she just the lines and her conditioning and just the shape and everything is just beautiful. So, but like I said, there's just adding the more divisions. Like I said, somewhat is good, somewhat bad. The good part is that it opens it up to more people having the ability to get into the sport. With different physiques, everybody's different genetics. But the bad part is sometimes it's like it's too accessible to where you still have the people who are like, oh, I went to the gym. I joined the gym, and I think I'll do a show in a couple weeks. Because I remember when the very first season of the bikini, I got introduced to the sport for my husband. He was a judge for several years, for about 15 years in the NPC. And when bikini came out, I think it was 2010 when bikini came out in the NPC. And I remember being in the restroom before prejudging, and there was a couple of girls, and they were like, "Oh, you're doing this show? You're doing bikini." Yeah, I just said a couple weeks ago I'm going to do this show. I'm like, who does that? It's bodybuilding still, just crazy that the concept of, I just jumped in a show 2 weeks, so that part is bad, but I think it's evolved more in especially the higher levels. It's like, okay, no, there's a criteria you have to meet. I mean, it's still about bodybuilding. It's still about building physique. There's still the conditioning and the symmetry and all that. So, but it's just, there's always going to be that, people who are like, oh, this just sounds like a great idea. Or this is a bucket list idea. The stage isn't always the place for that bucket list thing to me. It's, I'm always commend anybody who wants to better themselves in any way, shape, or form. Physically, just a career, education, whatever. But there still has to be that little bit of eliteness to stepping on stage. That's not a first step. A lot of people, I've heard of people who, they're, okay, I want to do a show before they've ever even joined a gym. They've never even worked out. They get this idea. They see this on Instagram or whatever. And, I want to look like that. I'm going to do a show. I'm going to compete. I'm going to turn pro. I'm going to be a professional bodybuilder or bikini, whatever division it is. And they haven't even joined a gym yet. And that's just crazy to me. But I think people get ahead of themselves. And somewhat, I think it has to do with the social media world. I think we're kind of in an Insta society to where younger people today, like they want what their parents had, worked 20, 30 years for. They want the same car, the same house, everything instantly. And that's the same way with bodybuilding, the fitness world, is they want what people who've been doing this for 15, 20 years, they want it right now, as soon as they start, and it doesn't work that way in any aspect of life. So
it's funny you mentioned that, because I was talking to a woman who had been in bodybuilding for a while as well, and she had the same kind of critique on it. When she was getting started, the people that she was meeting were in the gym for 10 years, and then they did bodybuilding. Exactly. And I think it's great, like you're saying. I think it's great because it makes it more accessible, but at the same time, it's like, you almost have to have some level of barrier for entry to make anything quality.
100% agree with that.
Whenever you talk about, first getting into the sport, and you have these different, or these very few really divisions, right? Do you think that because there are more divisions now, it's still called bodybuilding? Do you foresee some sort of like transition to where there's maybe, because I'm just thinking of like the future of the sport, and I don't want to say like there's more of an emphasis or less of an emphasis on the health aspect of it now, but with more, I guess, social media and more just media in general talking about bodybuilding, and you have more eyes on it. Is there in your head any transition to like, not rebranding, but you know what I'm saying, like to where the other divisions are kind of like boosted as the marketable side more for the people who are just getting in, or the people who are looking at it from the outside?
Yeah, and I think that's the way it's going to be. I think that there's going to be those core people who are just like bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is the epitome, especially in men's, the open men's bodybuilding is the epitome. But it's sad because if you go to especially local shows, there's so few. I mean, when I first was around the sport, again, like in 2007, say like middleweight men's, there would be like 30 guys in that class. There would be 30 girls in a class, and now it's like if you can get 5, that's crazy. Like I said, a local show. But I think that's, again, there's that negative connotation toward the bodybuilding, these freaks of nature, and so that's just not the norm. And so there's always going to be that. I think the general population is never going to accept that in general, especially the women. But so that's why I think that the bikini, even the figure, is more marketable. It's all about because even though they're judging physiques, it's all about the whole look, being pretty and sexy, and the hair and the makeup and everything is more. That's just more acceptable throughout. But I know people who compete in bikini, and they get the, oh gross, you have muscles, and I'm like, this is just an athletic build, girl, But I think that's the whole thing. Is like it's still a business. Bodybuilding is a business. The more marketable, it's just going to transition. Not transition, but that's just the obvious focus. I don't think that just the general population is ever going to accept, especially female bodybuilding division. So it's just. I don't really know I don't know if anything's going to change as far as they're going to make any change. I'm hoping that, female bodybuilding doesn't go away, but I also hope they keep the reins on, like not letting it get out of hand, encouraging that just crazy, over the top look, just too extreme, the sport of bodybuilding, to get to the level of like the professional level, it's not healthy as far as like, getting that lean and everything. It's not a healthy thing to sustain, but that's what you got to do. So, I think definitely focus on people's health. That's a definite thing. I think fitness in general needs to be, it's fitness. It should be health, it should be health geared. And, and my whole goal is always to be, my whole thing is whether I can, I'm 48. I'll be 48 in 3 weeks. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to compete again or not. I'm always kind of, go back and forth. But my main thing is to be healthy. I want to do, I am planning on bodybuilding, as far as working out and, the whole lifestyle for the rest of my life. And so my focus is on being healthy, doing that in a healthy manner and not taking anything to an extreme. And I think that needs to be a focus and encouraged more. And I think by, pulling in the reins a little bit of like, okay, this is what the look we want. We're not going to, reward that just over the top extreme look where this just, you have to get so big and, this, we still want the, feminine. We're women, we want to be feminine, and that's what you should be, and it should be, aesthetically pleasing. It's an aesthetic sport, and so when it gets too extreme, I think that that's where the negative connotation comes in toward it,
Yeah, and a lot of people do, on the men's side as well, especially. I feel like they look at the extreme and they're, whether that's like oh my gosh, this is awesome, or wow, that's whatever, that's bad, or that's, I don't like that look, or that's disgusting, or whatever.
Exactly.
And it's like, how do you really, because that's what's like eye catching, that is what brings maybe a non-fan into at least looking at it, that it's something to where it may not be what is best for the person, maybe not even best for the sport long term per se, but it is marketable from like a all kind of eye catcher,
inspiring thing.
Yeah. How do you? Because like I said, that's kind of what people think of when they think of bodybuilding. They don't think of the person that they. In their head, they think, well, if I tried really hard, I could maybe be this, but I could never be that. So how do you're talking about kind of reeling that in, and maybe from a men's perspective, even more reeling it in, how do you reel that in, but still keep kind of the exclusivity in because in my head, looking back,
yeah, exactly.
It was always like, I could never do that. That's a superhero. That's a superhuman. That's somebody that I could look up to, but I could never do that. Yeah. How do you keep that kind of like, not that you would want people not to do it because of that, but how do you keep that like upper level without making it too much of a down here kind of thing?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the answer. Ultimately, I think it is dependent on the judging. The judging is like, okay, this is what we reward, this is what we don't reward. And I really don't know the answer to that. I know that it's hard to just kind of related, but not kind of, it's like, it's just like, okay, people don't understand sometimes, like, okay, well, this is the criteria for the division. So say your figure. Well, you'll go to a show and now they allow the crossovers to the show. Well, how can the same person win the the figure overall and the bikini overall. Totally different divisions. And what people don't understand from a judging standpoint, because I mean, I've been involved in that world, not from being a judge, but just in that world, is you've got to, it depends on who shows up at the show. So you've got to pick the people on the stage that are the closest to the criteria. And sometimes that's this person who in bikini, that's the closest to the criteria that showed up that day. And they're also the closest to the figure criteria. So it's just very difficult. My opinion, I don't think they should allow crossovers, at least past the local level. Because sometimes you go in there and you're like, okay, I really don't know what division I fit in. So maybe if I do a show, and I encourage people to do that, like, okay, your first show, you don't know for sure where you fit in. So do a show, do both classes, get the judges' feedback of which they think that and then from that point on, you go to that division. Or if, you know what, I really don't like figure, I want to do bikini. So tone it back a little bit. Don't, get as conditioned, maybe don't train as hard as far as, getting size in there. So, but you have to pick a division that fits you, your personality, your body. But at the upper levels, like the national levels, I don't think you should be able to cross over. I just think that, so you need to pick a division and stick with it, in my opinion. And I think that's the only way to really just from that standpoint, the upper echelon, like, okay, we're sticking with this criteria and, we're not going to veer from it. And if you don't fit, then you're not going to place as well. And I think that's the only way of, I guess, weeding things out and sorting things out. I guess I'm not sure if that's the right word to say. It's just drawing a line and sticking to it. Yeah. As far as in the judging. So
kind of going back in time to your own bodybuilding journey, kind of mentioned it a little bit, but how did you make that decision? As much as it is more popular today, there's a stigma around it, and there's definitely more of a stigma around it back then. How did that stigma kind of affect you when you first started?
When I first was around the sport, like I said, I actually my first show that I actually attended was in May of 2007, and I was, like I said, they only had women's bodybuilding, men's bodybuilding, and figure, and I looked up at the figure girls, and I never even knew there was such a thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I want to do that. They looked, everything about it was just awe inspiring to me. And I wanted to do that. And, but actually, and I was just a skinny girl. I was always just skinny. I was more of like runner type, mostly did cardio. And I had only been in the gym consistently for a few years at the time. And, but I had that in the back of my mind. I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do that. And I didn't know whether I really would or not. So it took me, 6 years before I stepped on stage. So, because I was more focused on, my husband and I had just started he's now my husband, but at the time we were just dating. We had just started dating, and we were more focused on getting married and starting a family and everything. So about 6 months after my son was born, I was trying to just get back in shape after the baby or whatever. And I started working out, and I was like, I got to focus on getting back into working out, because I had worked out, consistently for years, but my body just started changing really quickly and responding really quickly. So I was like, you know what, so I brought it to my husband. I really want to do a show, and he was like, I don't know if you want to do that or not, because I'm more outgoing than I used to be, but I'm still not the most outgoing person, and it's very intimidating to get on stage. It's still intimidating to me to get on stage, and even as we spoke earlier, even this talking in front of people is intimidating to me. But I just thought it was beautiful, and I wanted to do it. So I had a setback. I was wanted to do a show, like, just had the idea of like within a year of having my baby. So, but I was so small, I was going to have to do bikini, and that really didn't fit my personality. I'm not that sassy. That's not my personality. So I ended up having to have surgery unexpectedly that summer. So we decided just, let's recover from that. Let's work toward my goal with being figure. So we did that. I did my first show in actually almost 6 years to the day of attending my first show, did figure, but I never even really thought about the stigma of it. So I didn't think about it. I just thought it was beautiful. I thought it was great. Now my family was kind of like, what? It's kind of, they were totally fine with they knew my husband was a bodybuilder when, I met him and everything, and he had competed and they were totally fine with that. But it was just like, what? That's just because it wasn't a sport that they're totally up for. And I come from a very athletic family. My whole family's into sports, all kinds of different sports. I always played sports. My siblings played sports, nieces and nephews and everything. But that was just totally, they didn't know anything about that. And that was just totally weird and strange to them. And so that was just like, what? To them. And they still, my parents are old school. They're, older, and they're just, it's kind of like we agree to disagree about bodybuilding and we just don't discuss it and everything. But they're just like totally, are you crazy kind of thing. So, and then, I laugh because we finally, even over the years, have gotten used to like me opening my little container of food, me bringing my food to the stuff. Cause I remember one time I had like just some chicken and rice, and my mom, what are you eating? And I said, chicken and rice. You would have thought I had a container of earthworms or something because you thought that was so weird because it was, I don't know. But anyway, so, but yeah, and I'm the type of, I'm my age, I've learned, I don't worry what other people think. I don't let that bother me. That's an evolution. That's as I think getting older and actually actively working on not worrying about what other people think. As long as you like yourself, and that's what, I like how I look is, and that's my thing with one of the things I love about bodybuilding is it's my like, this is my artwork. This is my science project of, always trying to improve, always trying to, genetics is a huge part of it, and I don't have the greatest genetics for the sport, but I'm very determined. I have a lot of drive and determination and just grit, and that's what I use that to I always try to reach my fullest potential, and I think that in any aspect of life, that's what you should do. And I always encourage anybody to do that. And, your full potential might not be ever stepping on stage, but just whatever, you find something that you love and you're passionate about and, go all in, that's what I think, anybody should do in any aspect of life.
And you mentioned art and science right there. And I think it's so cool because it really is both, it's the art of the kind of like it's the end result is the art, and the science is like the process and the, figuring out what schemes work for you, what nutrition works for you.
And it's a continuous process. I've gotten, I've been doing this for 10 years, and, I finally got to the point to where I feel like I have this right balance between, one of the biggest things I've found is figuring out what I need to eat that tastes good. I refuse to eat stuff that doesn't taste good, no matter how it's supposed to fit in the plan. So I've learned over the years of how to cook things and how to the right seasoning or whatever. And I remember when I first started out and was doing this, I remember literally sitting and eating a plate of egg whites and crying and don't talk to me, don't look at me, any of that. I have to choke this down, and I'm like, I refuse to do that. So but finding that right balance of, okay, I know what I can eat, what I can't eat, how this affects me. And I write everything. I'm old school. I put everything in a book. I write down everything I eat, cheat meal or other. I measure my food out, weigh it. If I eat at a restaurant or at a family get together, estimate, okay, I know about what a cup of rice is or whatever it is. Doing that, and I'm always like monitoring and assessing, okay, well, this food is affecting me in this way. Okay, I'm holding water after eating this, and sometimes it might take a couple of times of like, okay, what caused me to weigh? Like I said, it's just a constant monitoring access, and it's just, I think it's fun. I enjoy it. It's not, to me, it's not restrictive, and I always tell people, and anybody who's in the bodybuilding world and has dieted knows, is people always think, oh, you're starving yourself, you don't like food, what's wrong with you? I love food. And honestly, pretty much any bodybuilder I know loves food. What the average person doesn't understand is if you have that little bit of deprivation and you don't just have the standard American diet all the time, how much better stuff tastes when you do get it. That pizza is so much better when you've deprived yourself a little bit of it. And then sometimes it's just like, you know what, this really isn't that great. You know, I want back on my meal plan.
Yeah.
So, and your body does, just by science, what you feed it, that's what it craves.
Yeah.
So, that's some of it too. But yeah, I've just it's just a lot of trial and error. And like I said, I like the process. I like, I love the stage. I love competing, but just the whole process is just fun to me and exciting and interesting. And, that's why I keep at it. If it was just for the stage, I don't think I would do it. And it surprises me the number of people that do. Only for the stage, that's all they worry about is that one show. And I don't see longevity in that. You know, you have to find something that fits into your life. Because I think because the stage will eventually always go away. You know, whether your age, whatever, the stage is not always going to be there for the rest of your life, you know, like I said, when you're 75 years old. But I can still, you know, eat right, train on some level, and just always try to be my best and be healthy and everything, and enjoy life. You know, there's a whole lot more to life than just stepping on that stage. And so the last few years, I've really, really focused on trying to find that balance and, you know, still having family time, because I have a child, and so, you know, giving him his attention that he needs, and you know, he's not always my number one priority, and still doing this lifestyle, and it does help because my husband is in the lifestyle too, and so when you have that, you know, you live with someone who's doing the same thing, you know, it helps so much, because I can't imagine being with someone who's, you know, eating junk all the time, and then I'm trying to do that. It would be very, very difficult to do that. But we're both on the same page as far as everything, bodybuilding wise, and, you know, living this lifestyle. So that is very helpful.
This episode is sponsored by Fountain TRT. Fountain wants to help you with your potential low T. Why do I say potential low T? Because a large percentage of men don't even know they're suffering from low T. They simply live with the symptoms that include weight gain, sluggishness, and erectile dysfunction, and have no idea of the cause. Fountain wants to help you figure out if low T is your issue and help you get your levels back to a healthy range with a topical cream. The Fountain team are medical professionals who have years of experience in the industry and expertise in TRT. These labs are often covered by insurance, and you may not have to pay anything out of pocket. The topical treatment is easy to use. Just apply it once daily to your shoulder area. Most men start seeing results immediately. So if you're ready to gain back your energy, drive, and mental clarity, lose that stubborn weight, and just generally feel happier, check out Fountain TRT and use the link below to support the weight room and claim your $1 evaluation. This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below, or use code TWR20. Online at mybapparel.com. You're talking about those kind of trials and tribulations, and I don't do bodybuilding, but I love kind of the grind of it, if you want to call it that. You know, I don't know if I'll ever step on the stage. I don't think that's for me per se, but I do enjoy the training, and I enjoy trying to optimize what I eat, and, you know, I'm on a meal plan and trying to optimize my recovery and things like that. I really enjoy that side of it. And it was probably this summer, midsummer, I started to eat on a meal plan, and those trials and tribulations, I was cooking some rice in an Instant Pot. And this is also a trial and tribulation of first time cooking, really, and learning these things. And I just remember I needed this much. I can't remember exactly how much, but I needed this much rice to eat throughout the week. And so I was like, all right, I'll put that much rice into here, you know, this many cups. Turns out the rice, you know, it multiplies. And
yes.
I had like 50 cups of rice, yes. And I needed like maybe half of that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I buy these, I think the brand is Success, but they're actually boiling bag rice. And I think there's like about 2.5 cups per bag. So I make like 8 bags, and you just boil them. You put them in water, you boil it for 10 minutes, and it's great. I love it. It's my favorite rice. Well, I have done it before where I put the bags in the pot, turn the pot on, didn't put any water in it. And so, that was bad.
Yes.
Luckily, I found out, or I realized it really quickly because you start smelling the burning. But yeah, there's always something, especially if you're not used to cooking. I've been cooking for years, but yeah, just, again, just finding that stuff. I always tell this funny story. When I come from, my parents were old school, as I said. I grew up on, everything was cooked in Crisco or butter. And so when my husband and I were first, it was literally like 3 weeks before our wedding. He had a competition, and so he was dieting for his competition. And of course, I was somewhat dieting with him. So we would go to my parents' house for like Sunday dinner or something. And my mom was like the fried chicken, mashed potatoes kind of meal. And so we said, well, Sonny's dieting for a show. He can't have fried chicken. And so so she was like, well, okay, I can boil his chicken. I can keep out some chicken and boil it. So she would boil chicken breast. And then I said, don't even do the mashed potatoes. Just keep some plain potatoes out for us. Don't put anything on it. And so we did that. Well, we'd go there, and he's like, oh my gosh, that chicken is so good. It's so good, And so I would boil chicken, and it would just, you have to choke it down. It was just nasty. And so he's like, you got to talk to your mom. You got to talk to your mom. How does she make this chicken? Because it tastes so good, because I can't eat the chicken that you make. And I called her up, and I said, well, Mom, how do you make that boiled chicken? She goes, well, I put a couple of sticks of butter in the water. And I said, Mom, you can't have that. That's too much fat. So we that's been 15 years ago. We still laugh about it, but it's like people just don't understand. Because my mom's like, well, that's what's wrong with butter and Crisco. That's healthy.
That's funny. It is like people they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I was actually another instance when I switched over to potatoes. I was cooking potatoes and doing it for the first time by myself, and I was like, I don't really know how long to let these things go. I'll just let them go, and I'm doing some other stuff, and I'm like, what's that smell? And apparently all the water had evaporated out, and I was like, oh, I think these are done now. Yeah. So the rest of the week it tasted just a little off, but you live and you learn, and that's kind of the cool part though about like doing something, jumping into something, is you learn these things that you didn't realize you were going to learn. I mean, learn how to cook. Like for me, I was never confident. I was always kind of afraid to cook and be in the kitchen, and I'm going to burn the house down and that kind of thing. And now it's like I don't want to cook for other people maybe yet, but I'm getting there. And
it's like that's just part of life. As I think I said earlier, is you can't learn something unless you try it. You don't know if you're going to be good at it, and that's like with the bodybuilding. And anytime I never discourage somebody. I don't like to discourage from anything that they want to do, but I always, when somebody says, hey, I'm thinking about doing a show, or I approach people, like I see people at the gym and I'm like, you know what? I think this girl has a nice physique, I'm going to go up and approach her and say, hey, have you ever thought about doing bikini or whatever? And, sometimes yes, sometimes no, or whatever, or they've done a show and I just, didn't know. But I always tell people, I'm like, it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. I fell in love with it instantly. As soon as I got off the stage, I can't wait to do the next show and, see how much better I can get each year. I want to, make improvements. Here's what I'm going to do, but it's just not for everyone. And it's like some people, and I've known people who did well at a show and they're like, it's not for me. I don't like the being so strict on my diet and everything like that. So, it's, but you don't know unless you try it,
And I think it goes back to what you said about, learning how to eat right and learning like what good foods are and learning and being in control of like, if I want to eat this, I will, but it's not like the cravings aren't forcing me to eat things I don't want to eat, and learning that, exercise is important and getting in the habit of moving your body and those things that are going to be there long after the stage. Maybe you try it, maybe it doesn't work out, but at least now you still have those skills, those habits, you have those things that they just simply lead to a healthier, better life, And
my husband and I talk about this all the time because, we do have our cheat meals, and I like to have my cheat meals, and, if there's something just we're really craving, if I want to have a pizza, once or twice a week or something that I'm just really craving, I have it, especially, if I'm not, getting ready for competition, you eat this and it's like, oh, it's so good. It's like, I feel so miserable. I'm like bloated. I'm lethargic, and we talk about this all the time, is so many people, they eat like this all the time.
Yeah.
And they feel like this all the time. They think this is the norm.
And they don't know why.
Feeling like this is normal to them. And so they don't know how feeling good, they don't know about feeling good. And it's like, they just don't realize. And I would just love for people to like experience just feeling good, that the feeling good is normal and not this lethargic, like heavy, bloated, and I don't know if you ever watched years and years ago, it was one of those eye-opening things. This gentleman did a kind of a documentary called Super Size Me.
Yeah.
Really fit guy, and he ate nothing but McDonald's for like a year. And like the doctors were literally like telling him to stop, you're killing yourself and everything. And it was like, wow. But it's just true. I mean, he was like, went from this fit, active guy to just eating nothing but junk. And he was laid around, lethargic, put on all this weight and everything. So that's what, and that's anytime I always assess everything of like, okay, is it worth it? Is this food worth it to feel like that? Or is it not? And most of the time it's not. And, and that's even like if I go to, now, like I said, like this past year, I knew I wasn't going to compete. But I always, every year I've cut, ever since the beginning, I always do a cut during the summertime, whether I'm competing or not. Just because I think your body likes that cycle, and of course I like to have my abs and, looking for summer or whatever. I always assess like, I don't like to miss family get-togethers or anything like that, but I always assess, okay, is this whatever they're having worth it to me? Is that like to waste or spend those calories? Or if it's not, and sometimes it's not is, and sometimes it isn't. So if it's something I just really, really like, it's one of my favorite things to eat, I'm going to eat it and not feel guilty about it or whatever. But then sometimes I'm like, okay, no, that's not something that I really, really like that much, and it's not worth it to me. So, but it's just, again, over the years and years and years of trial and error and figuring it out. And, so I don't think it becomes easier. I just think, I just have more of a tolerance of, pain tolerance, I guess is easier. It's like, that's what people don't understand. You get people complaining so much like, I'm just starving. I'm like, you're not really starving. There's people who actually are starving, but it's like, you're going to be hungry. That's part of the process. You're going to be hungry. I rarely eat a meal that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm full, I'm good. I'm pretty much like, we always kind of jokingly say, oh, that was a nice little snack. It's like, I know I'm not full yet, or I'm going to be hungry within 30 minutes, but this is my allotted amount of food at this time and everything. So it's just, a lot of the whole process is getting that, tolerance level of like, yeah, you just got to embrace the suck of it. It's going to suck. You're going to be tired. You're going to be hungry, but there's a whole lot worse things. This is our choice to do this. And actually, we're very fortunate to be able to have this, make this choice and not actually have to go hungry or whatever. So.
Yeah. And I think we're kind of like obsessed in a way with food in this country of like, it is everything. Like it's the therapy, it's the celebration. It's like, okay, obviously it's our daily meals as well, but it's so much more than that. We're using it in such like a wrong way, for so many reasons. We don't have education on how to eat and what foods. It's like the other day I was listening to something and I heard something. It was like, the junk food, and it was talking about junk food, and it's just so weird that there is a junk food. Like there's no other things that people are like, oh, I want that more than the good thing. Yeah. It's so weird that that's like a huge industry. That's huge, for business. It's huge profit that people are eating these things that are killing them essentially. And it's just the whole cycle of what that turns into as far as, healthcare and prescriptions and all that's the whole cycle. It's just crazy that we don't have.
That's why, this was years ago. I read or heard that, like, say Japan, for example, like their healthcare costs are like 1% of what ours are. Wow. Because people don't eat America is the country that eats. We're just known for, not that they don't have fast food restaurants, but that's not the main source of food. And even like when I was a kid growing up, of course, I grew up in a very lower middle class household, and it was like going out to eat was a treat. Like that was a big deal. And now it's like that's just the norm. Like everybody eats out every day, and that's over the years that's what people have gotten more and more health related problems that are not diseases. Or, I mean, sometimes it's diseases as well, but just there's so many more health problems and it's related to food. Yeah. It's related to the food we eat. And then even and when I was a kid, like, and of course I love my, Polar Pop or whatever, my diet Polar Pop. But when I was a kid, like a large was what was like a medium now.
Right.
That was a large. And so then like, even like what's a kid's cup, that was a small, like even a soft drink, it was like the different amounts. It's like everything's like, it has to be bigger and better now. Biggie size, everything or whatever.
There's no control in all the things that are like, that we're focused on and we're worried about, and what's really causing so many issues and so many problems. It's right under our nose, and we're either clueless.
Simple fix.
Either we're clueless about it, or we're, it's not fun, and we don't have the discipline to do it. And
exactly, it's not. Yeah, that's the thing about bodybuilding is not glamorous and sexy or exciting. The day-to-day grind is not that. The stage, that day of the stage might be, but the rest of it is not. It's pretty boring and simple and, basic, going to the gym and working out and you're getting your meals in. It's not an exciting lifestyle. It's just pretty basic and boring, but, just, I would say, like, if they had a reality show of just following a bodybuilder around day to day, it's not gonna sell. It's pretty boring.
Yeah. They see like the Instagram side of it, and they see the stage. They see these big guys and women that have like the endorsements and things, and they think like, oh, that's a glamorous lifestyle. But for most part, it's like it's unrelatable, and that's why like Instagram is the way it is. Like there's not that many day-to-day things on there. It's a highlight reel. Highlights, right? Yeah. You mentioned though, getting kind of that first show in, and you were just like hooked. But you also said that it's kind of like not really in your personality to want to be in front of people and do that kind of thing. So what about it specifically, like on the stage, made you hooked?
Well, and my husband told me at the time, he was like, you just got to become a different person. You got to become a different person. When that first step on that stage, you got to become a different person. And I remember this years and years ago, hearing an interview with Beyonce, the singer, and she's a very shy person and not outgoing person in real life, apparently. And she says, I just become, my stage persona is Sasha Fierce. So I always kind of laugh at that, Sasha Fierce. And that's what you just got to do. You just got to become a different person and just walk out there, the smile, maybe fake the confidence to some extent. And of course, it's not easy to get out there in front of, all these people that, majority of them are strangers. You're not wearing very many clothes, but it's just, I don't know, just something about the lights and the whole experience. I don't know. I can't explain it. It's just, I think unless you've done it, it's hard to explain, but, I don't know. I just liked it. And in my first show, it was Indiana State Championships. And of course, I started at age 38, competing. So I was always able to do the Masters. So I did Masters and Open, and I did figure, started off in figure. And I think I got third in the Open, and then the Masters class comes out, and it was a relatively big class. And I got moved to the center because I had been around the sport enough to know, okay, the whole goal is to get moved toward the center, Well, so I was like, okay, I was splitting center with this other girl, and of course I'm like assessing, of course I'm still pretty new to it, assessing, people's physiques and everything. And I knew that my conditioning, I was still small, but my conditioning was probably, that's always been a strong point of mine, is conditioning. So I knew my conditioning was probably, if not the best, close to the best. But the girl who was splitting center with me, she was like shorter, and she actually was not very conditioned at all. And so when they announced I got second and she won, I was like really kind of upset. And she actually looked at me, and I was like, this was like never happens, and says, I thought you wiped the floor with me. I mean, she herself was shocked that she beat me. And so I was a little upset. My husband was like, you got to get your head on straight. This is sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You're not going to go. You're never doing another show if you're going to have this attitude. You gotta. It's a learning experience. You don't always get the call you want. And of course, going into it, I didn't even know if I would even make the top 5. But anyway, so then it was like, so then in looking at the pictures and stuff, I could see she had a better structure than me, and figures a whole lot of structure, about structure. And she just had a better structure than me, and so I saw that. But then I was like, actually my second show was a week later. And I came in and I improved my posing some, because learned a little bit, like as far as makeup wise, did a little, better presentation overall. And I actually ended up winning the master's class of there was 14 or 15 in the class. And I ended up winning. And so it was like, oh my gosh, that was, such a great experience. I mean, feeling to actually win. So then I was like, okay, how can I do better? How can I do better next year? And then my goal became like, I want to win an open class, So I just, like I said, that whole, I don't know, the whole idea of continuous improvement and getting better and seeing how much further I can push myself and see how much further I can go has always been my drive. I actually never dreamed that I would actually turn pro. I never that was never a lot of people like I said earlier is even before they step on stage, I'm turning pro. That was never my whole goal was seeing if I could do a little bit better, get a little bit better, improve my physique. That was always more my goal than anything. And then I just progressed as I went on. And then I finally got to the point. I actually did Kentucky Muscle in 2016. That was my first season of doing women's physique. I finally just outgrew figure. Did women's physique, and I did 2 shows over the summer and did well, but there just really weren't women's physique. There just wasn't that many competitors in either show, and I won both shows. But so people were encouraging me because the second show was in July, and I was like, it's just a few weeks. You got Masters Nationals coming up, and I was like, I don't know. And I had some people encourage me to do that, and I just had this feeling I just had this feeling that I wasn't quite ready for that level. So I was going into my off season that fall, and I had just put on way too much weight, way too fast within 6 weeks, and I was like, okay, I got to get a rein in on this. And I had been to Kentucky Muscle tons of times. That was the big show around here, and I really never thought I would do it. And so I just got this idea. I was like, I feel like I needed one more show in. And so I had one more show in me that year. So I decided, what, I'm going to do Kentucky Muscle. If I do well at that show with judges that have never seen me, more competitors, more stiff competition, then that will be my confirmation that, yes, maybe I need to step up to the next level and go to a national show. So I did. I did a 10-week prep then. And I came in and I won my open class and the masters, and there was a lot of competitors, and so that was my solidify. Okay, next year we're going to nationals. So that was, but I still, even going to nationals was still more of a let's see where I stand there. I don't want to make a fool of myself, see how I stand there. I never really thought I'm going to walk in, because there are people who walk in the first time at nationals and they get their pro card, but it doesn't happen very often. I know people who've gone to nationals for years and never get their pro card, or they've gone many, many, many years and eventually get their pro card. And I'm like, okay, this is my shot. Let's see how we stand. And so I was fortunate enough to, I was the right place, the right time, brought the right physique, the right, other people showed up, and I was fortunate enough to, come home with that pro card, but even then, I walked off that stage and I was like, okay, I'm not ready to compete as a pro. I know I was not going to be competitive as a pro at that point. I was good enough to get to the point of getting my pro card, but I just didn't feel like I was the type of person. There are people who do, okay, yeah, they can walk right into a pro show. But I knew I wasn't. I wasn't that one person. And that's one thing that you learn over the years. At least I have this learned self-awareness. I know where I stand as far as okay, compared to other people. And so I knew I needed that couple years to step back and say, okay, I need to build, and before I even think about doing a pro show. So I actually took off 2 seasons not competing before I decided to do a pro show in 2020. So
you mentioned the having the structure. How much of that to you especially kind of in those early shows, what could kind of be like shaped by the posing? Like how much of that could be shaped by the posing?
There's a lot. A lot of it depends on the divisions. Honestly, that's one of the reasons I transitioned over to women's physique. Figure that's one thing. Like there's so much on structure because like the posing is like okay, you have to do that straight on pose, and they want that tiny waist and that that X factor, and you still have to do like the quarter turns in women's physique. But you also have those opportunities to do those different poses, and you can, there's different ways there's not like a set way. You only do this pose this way. You can, like the front double bicep, you can do it straight on. You can do it with a twist. You can do that. So it's all, any division is always about highlighting your strengths and hiding your flaws. But I think there's, like the more doing the bodybuilding physique poses, there's more opportunity for that. But posing is everything. I've never been awesome at posing, and there's some people that it's an art, especially, and that's one thing that held me back from switching to women's physique is the poses, the mandatory poses that I figured I could figure out, but doing the routine was just horrifying to me, terrifying to me, and it still is. I'm just not that artistic dancer, creative person, and it's such an art. You see like the Kai Green, when he does a posing routine, it's like it's art. It's like a ballet or something. And there's people who have that, and I'm just in awe, and I love to see that, especially when you put the combination of that artistry and then the physique that match is just like beautiful. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. I could just watch it all day. People are creative, or they have this really, exciting, fun, creative, or it's just, I love to watch it. And so that was something that, and of course, a lot of people don't realize like the posing routine doesn't count toward anything. That's just more for the audience. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot goes into posing, and, some people are great at it, and it can make or break, especially when when it's really, really close. It can make or break. I've seen people who's like, oh, they have a great physique, and you're just cringe at how bad their posing is. And that's something that people, especially early on, new people don't realize how important it is, and honestly, how much that takes out of you. It can be grueling. Like when you have a show that there's like really close, and they will turn you, and you are physically like cramping up and everything, and you have to still put on that presentation like you're having a great time and you feel great and you're smiling and everything. And it's a workout, to do the posing. It's to get it right, to do it right, and to present the way you're supposed to. It hurts. I mean, it physically hurts, and so that's why you have to build up that endurance for it. And that's where the practice comes in, is not only just getting it right, but also building up that endurance for it, because it's just it's just like like yoga or something. You go and do yoga once a week, you're not going to be great at it as if you do it every day, and your body adapts and knows what it's supposed to feel like and everything.
Just simply doing like something out of your routine. If you've ever, switched up your workout routine, and you're even just one movement, it can be like, oh my gosh, that really, my back or my legs or whatever. It's like it completely game changer.
Yeah. And increase your weight a little bit. Or like I was telling my husband, he's been laughing at me because he just tells me I'm old, but like I have increased my weight on all my leg stuff this week, and I was like, oh, I'm really feeling it. Even though I just increased it a little bit, it's like, I'm feeling it. But okay, I always like kind of wait till my body kind of adapts. Okay, this becomes too easy, I'm going to increase my weight a little bit, and you can feel it. But yeah, it's I always tell people, like, if your lower back isn't hurting when you're doing posing, then you're not doing it right. That's gonna, and it's not normal movements that you would ever do in any other aspect of life, but except for on the stage. But
yeah, you talked about kind of hiding the weaknesses and trying to show off more of what your strengths are. How much does that affect, though? Like whenever you are trying to hide a weakness, how much does that affect the ability to show off the rest of it?
You just have to figure that out, and a lot of it is it's always good to have. I mean, a lot of people have posing coaches, or just that third or second eye looking at you. Because I'm fortunate enough to have my husband, who was judged for years, so he knows what to look for. But just having that other person look at you, because you know sometimes you always focus on your flaws, and sometimes you always focus on your strengths as yourself. Or if you see yourself every day, you're like, okay, I don't see any change. So it's just it's just figuring out the overall what looks best on you. It's just and that takes some trial and error, and you know, and again, feedback from the judges. You know, and a lot of judges will attend or hold posing clinics, and that's just, I always encourage. I know, like here locally, usually there's a couple of posing clinics right before like Kentucky Muscle or whatever, so that, and I'm like, you need to go to that. I don't care how good you think you are at your posing. You need to go to that and have the person who's going to be judging you see, if nothing else, that you're really, really interested in what they have to say. And then, you know, they'll give you a critique, they'll give you some pointers, and they're going to remember that, okay, this person was interested. This person was there. They wanted to learn from me. And you know, this is what their posing was at the beginning of the clinic. This is what they're posing that they actually worked on when I told them. You know, that makes an effect. It's amazing being around, like I said, being around the sport so long and being around judges is like, they have some like crazy memory of like, they can remember stuff. And it's a skill. People don't realize, average person doesn't realize how much goes into judging. And like, you know, you have to judge all these people in a very, very quick amount of time and make these decisions really, really quickly in a very short amount of time. And a very skilled judge it's amazing how like the little details they can see and remember. It just amazes me, the memory, because I can, you know, you can see somebody and I'm like, well, yeah, and I wouldn't remember minute details about a person if they walked with me in their normal clothes, you know, and like they'll say, oh yeah, this show you did this, yep. It amazes me. So
this episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com. This episode is sponsored by Fountain TRT. A large percentage of men don't even know they're suffering from low T. Fountain wants to help you figure out if low T is your issue and help you get your levels back to a healthy range with a topical cream. The topical treatment is easy to use. Just apply it once daily to your shoulder area. Most men start seeing results immediately. Check out Fountain TRT and use the link below to support the weight room and claim your $1 evaluation. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. And how much of do you feel like in your time in the sport, what level is it that bodybuilders feel like, whether it's true or not, they have to play the game of what you kind of mentioned, like with the judges? Like, you know, I've heard of several people talking about, like even on social media, like if they feel like they aren't posting, they're posing, and they don't feel like they're posting things during prep, it may come back to be like, well, were you putting in the work? Like whether that's true or not, like how much do you feel like that plays in the minds of the judges and the athletes?
I honestly don't think the judges worry whatsoever about your social media. Now, as far as like your prep, what you post in your prep, I don't think they pay attention. Now, they may pay attention to negative stuff that you post. If you're a negative person on social media or inappropriate, like you know, people get on there and start, you know, bad mouthing other people or something negative, or like criticizing judges, they don't know what's wrong. That kind of thing they'll play bad on you, because even if the judge themselves doesn't see it initially, it will get back to them eventually. You know, that I do know personally that things like that have happened, but I don't think they're not worried about whether somebody's posting their progress pictures whatsoever. They don't have time for that. You know, there's so many competitors, and that's not an issue. I just only think it would affect someone if they were posting something that was negative, causing drama, controversy. That's the kind of things that would negatively impact affect you in a competition.
And is that simply the human condition part of it? Like, hey, I may not want that to affect my overall look on this person, but it just does? Or is it kind of in the front of the brain, do you think?
I don't know. I would say that it depending on what the situation was. I know, somebody's starting to call just I don't know. Some of you'll see like the Olympia. These guys will be kind of that's more of an entertainment type thing. They're kind of talking smack about each other or whatever. That's part of just entertainment value of it. They're not going to do anything about that. They're not going to. That's not going to be a negative because that actually kind of ramps up people's anticipation of this. That kind of thing. But I'm talking about causing like a major controversy. I can't. Wouldn't think of, or just, for instance, somebody like just really, really bad mouthing somebody, accusing them of something, something like that, just trying to stir drama in the sport, like really negative and bring a negative connotation to the sport. I think they would do it to some extent as a, hey, we got your number. We don't condone that kind of behavior. So that's going to affect your placings.
Gotcha.
I think that that's kind of a
keep somebody in check almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Talking about the drama, how much of that drama do you see in person, like at a show? Have you ever seen any between athletes and judges, maybe behind closed doors, or athletes behind the curtain? Like what?
No, I've always had a pretty positive experience. I've never really had you'll get the people that kind of like kind of giving you a dirty look here and there, especially if it's like, okay, everybody's trying to size each other up. But I have in general had a positive experience. Now I've had that every once in a while. Okay, everybody's waiting to get their hand touched up in the morning before the show, and somebody just decides to kind of sneak in there. I'll call somebody out on that. I'm like, that's, we were here at 5 a.m. and you decided to show up at 6 o'clock. And no, that's not, I will call somebody out on that. But as far that was a local level. But as far as like, I haven't witnessed it personally. Now I do from, again, being associated with the judging panel, where somebody will just come up with, have a big fit of, why didn't I win? I should have won. That kind of thing. I've heard of that, not personally. Now I will say, now that I think of it, there was a couple of times because my husband judged. He never judged me on stage. We always made sure, like, I never did a show where he was judging, because it was like, even though there's always, don't want to have the opportunity for somebody to suggest that he's favoritism. So we always made a point of that, but. Just if somebody heard that I was even associated with the judging panel in any way, shape, or form, she got better, you placed better, or she won because of this. And I remember Ed Sanders. He used to be the state chairman in Indiana. He's actually a close friend of my husband's, and then he was a Mid-East Zone chairman for several years. And this girl happened, and my husband wasn't even at the show. He didn't even come to attend the show. He couldn't come to attend the show, and she got second to me, and so he went up to her, and she was just having a fit about it. Her husband was having a fit. Her whole family was having a fit. And he said, okay. He said, would you say that, okay, here's the criteria: symmetry, conditioning, muscle size. Okay. So he goes, here's the criteria. He said, so how would you say Debbie is better upper body than your upper body? She says, oh yes, most definitely. He says, well, would you say that she's better legs versus your legs? And she's like, no, my legs are better. I have bigger legs. He goes, you're correct. So symmetry, you all are a wash. Neither one of you have perfect symmetry. You're a wash. But would you say that she's more muscular than you? Oh yeah, she's definitely more muscular than me. Okay. So she beats you out on that criteria. And then what about conditioning? Oh yeah, she's more conditioned than me. So he said, so 2 out of the 3 criteria she beat you on. And the third criteria, it was a wash between the two of you. And she was like, oh, you're right. And, she and I are still friends on Facebook. She's a really super nice person, but it's just like, she just had to have that pointed out, And so that was one of the, but then there's other times that people don't take the time to do that. They just want to complain. They go on social media and complain that these judges are cheating, or like that. So, but I mean that's small. But I and of course I'm a type of person that I don't get involved in drama. I try to live a drama-free life. So some people thrive for drama. So.
I can see almost a little bit of like the day of, because emotions are high and things. Yeah. Taking it on social media though afterwards, it does seem a little. It's a little childish. It's like, but what's going to happen?
Exactly.
It's not going to change anything.
It's also like any aspect. I just don't like anybody causing drama on social media. I just think it's very childish, and even like people who post like way too many details about their relationships and stuff. It's like negative something, bad mouthing your ex-boyfriend. That stuff just is crazy to me. What good is that going to do? And that's what, as maturity level, like that's what I try to actually literally assess stuff. Okay, just in day to day life, like okay, is this bringing this up? Even if like with my spouse or whatever, is that going to? What benefit is that going to be? And that's what I always try to assess things is like, what benefit is it to bring up something that's I'm not even going to remember in 5 minutes, or to hurt somebody's feelings or anything like that. So, and of course, I'm not perfect at it. Nobody's perfect, but that's always I try to, as I matured, I always try to assess what benefit is this going to drive me. So, is it going to benefit me to cause drama with somebody? Is it going to benefit me to go on social media and complain that I didn't get the placing I want? It's like, that's not going to do anything. It's not going to go, oh, well, the judges aren't going to go, she's right. Well, next show I'm going to play. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to be like, oh, this is the person who causes drama,
Do you prefer to compete at like a show that's closer to where you live, where people can come and see, or do you prefer going away and kind of having that like mystique about it, and it's like a trip and it's an experience?
Well, in my situation, as a pro, I have to travel. There's no local pro women's physique show. Probably the closest would be Chicago or St. Louis. So I have to travel to do professional shows, and then also. My son is autistic, and so he's 11 years old, and it's just almost impossible for us to travel with him. So, and then we are in a situation where if he's not with me or my husband, we don't have like a babysitter or somebody who can watch him because it's just not feasible for that. So I have to travel and go by myself to shows. My husband can't go, and that was one of the best experiences about Kentucky Muscle, because I actually got to do that show, sleep in my own bed that night. My son can come, my sister came, some friends came, but yeah, I love to have the support and people can come and see my shows, but it's just not something that in my life that I can have. But then on the flip side is that it is kind of like my little mini vacation. It's my me time that I don't always get. So it's kind of like, it's kind of fun little adventure. But I do wish like when I did Tampa Pro in 2021 August, and I just remember the whole time I was thinking, oh, I wish my husband was here. I wish my husband could experience this with me, because it was such a cool show. And I remember like seeing people that like I followed on Instagram and for years, or just I remember walking past it was this weird, you don't, because this was such a big show, is I'm walking past down the lobby, and there's a restaurant in the lobby, and I see this guy. I'm like, where do I know this guy from? And it was Branch Warren was sitting there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Branch Warren is sitting there in this restaurant at the show. People that you, like I said, you idolize or look up to, and it's like, it was just a weird experience. And I just remember thinking, oh, I wish my husband was here. He would just be loving this, And that's something that I hate, but that's just our life. We have to miss out on a lot of things that, but for the better of our son, and that's just our life. But I do wish that I could have that, and like I said, but there's no close shows, and then and my son traveling to a show and all that would be just not feasible for us. So.
Getting into bodybuilding, you were 38, right?
Yes.
How much of like getting into the sport into like the masters divisions do you see at 38 or 40 or whatever that age is, like to where you're the newcomer, you're the new person on the block, especially kind of in your situation, it is a little bit different too, because it wasn't like you were new to competing, but you weren't new to the sport. How did that play? And then what do you see, and how do you try to help people in that same situation who are kind of getting into sport later in life? So you want to maximize your time, and you want to, I hear about so many people who get into it at maybe like 20 or 22 or whatever, and they go through like rough patches with bad coaches. They have really bad experiences, and it takes them, years to finally have like a good experience. Like, how do you see that in the sport, I guess, play out for people who get into it maybe just a little bit later in life?
Well, I think the advantage of getting into older, I think as you're an older person, one, it's a very expensive sport. And so usually people, by the time they're older, they're more financially stable and established to where they, it's more affordable to them. And then also just being older, like they're more disciplined. I think older people are more disciplined as far as sticking with it. And surprisingly, even just in the time I've been around the sport, and even like with the pro level, like this past year, a lot of I know Tim Gardner, who's one of the biggest promoters of pro. I mean, he does a ton of shows. He actually added masters classes to all of his pro shows this year, and so that's the masters. And then like I know they're doing a Masters Olympia next year. So it's just more encouraging, and of course, and some of it is just because some of these people who've been around for a long time in the bodybuilding world, they've just gotten older, and maybe they're not competitive in the open, but they're still competitive and they're still in the sport. So I just think there's still a lot of opportunity to be competitive and to be in the sport and be successful at in older ages. And I think that's becoming more so actually. So getting into it later in life, actually this her name, I don't know her personally, but I just met her before and we're friends on Facebook. But she actually started competing at, I'm going to say like in her 40s, and she just turned pro this year at 70 something. And she's been doing this all these years,
wow.
And it's like, and she, little bitty short and beautiful lady, but she just turned pro. She just kept at it all these years, and she just turned pro.
That's crazy.
And so there's opportunities. You're never too late to start. I don't think, and just in general, just fitness in general is like it's never too late to try to get your health back and try to improve yourself.
Yeah, that's a big message I think that people don't really get.
Yeah.
Like it's too late for me.
Yeah, people like, and I see that a lot of times, like, oh, if you haven't done it by the time you're 30, then you might as well just forget it, just give up and just, whatever. So, but yeah, I'm like, and I wish I would have started earlier, and I wish I would have known about the sport, and I was in the gym, in my 20s. I mean, I was always in sports and everything, and then, but I never knew anything about this world, and I would have loved to have started when I was in my 20s. I think I would have probably, well, I say that, but I don't know if I was disciplined enough. I've always been more disciplined person, but I don't know that I would have, would have been to this extent or whatever. But I mean, I have enjoyed my journey in the sport. You never know; it might have been worse or better or whatever if I started earlier. But like when I started was, I guess, the right time for me, and I just everything kind of fell together. So I've done well, and way far exceeded what I ever thought I would do. So
it's truly never too late to do anything. And when you're younger, when you're a kid, you think, 38, that's old.
Yeah.
And you continue to grow up, and you continue to become 30, 40, 50. And it's weird because it's kind of a dichotomy. It's like you realize that it's not as old as it was, but in your head, you're still thinking, well, it's too late. You could be 25 and something happened tomorrow. So the fact that you're 50 doesn't mean that it's too late. It just means that, you're starting when you're starting, and
exactly.
take advantage of the time you have left.
I like to follow a lot of like entrepreneurs type of pages on Instagram and kind of motivational type things. And I know there's several different ones, but like Harlan Sanders started KFC when he was like 60 or something like that. I mean, look how successful he was. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's There's more time than you think.
Yeah.
And at the same time,
and I just remember, of course, it's all about perspective of how old you are, but I remember my first grade teacher, when I was in first grade, she turned 50 when I was in first grade, and I thought, oh, she was the oldest person that how could anybody ever be that old? And I mean, but she looked like a little old lady, and I'm like, I'm going to be 50 in 2 years. I don't look like that,
Yeah.
So like 50 is not that old. So
when you turned pro and you were like, I'm going to take these 2 years off, was that like a plan at the beginning? Hey, we're taking these 2 years off, or was it kind of let's play it? We're going to take some time off, then kind of see what happens, and then take maybe a little more.
I knew that I definitely was going to take at least a year. And then, because I just knew I wasn't ready. I knew I needed to build more. I knew I needed to work on things. So I was definitely going to take a year off. And then, like, some personal life things happened, crazy stuff. So it ended up being 2 years. And so then I was like, okay, I don't know that I'll ever compete as a pro, which that's fine. I've achieved this one thing, that a whole lot of other people haven't. So that's fine with me. And then, like, probably about mid-2019, my husband was like, I think it's time for you to do a pro show, and I was like, okay, and so, but then we both, because we had always just done our own thing. I'd never had a coach before, and we had just, we got some advice from some, people in the business and stuff, but pretty much we had just done our own thing. He pretty much did my training and everything, and I did my diet. And so, we got that far that way. We did first successful, but we knew we were kind of to the extent of our knowledge and that the pro level is a whole different level. So we decided, he was like, well, but if you're going to do it, you need to hire a coach. So I had a very short list of coaches that I wanted to work with that I'd, followed for a while and stuff. So he was like, well, you pick your number one. So I did. And so I hired a coach for 2 seasons, and I learned crazy amount. So I remember the very first conversation, I was like, well, I can't eat carbs. And his first, meal plan he sent out to me was like, all these carbs. And I was like, oh, but it was just like, it is what it was. It was my body had to adapt to him. I thought I couldn't do it, so, but, I had to, good experience, learned a lot, but I knew after 2021, I wasn't going to compete. Definitely wasn't going to compete in 2022. Maybe I was done. I didn't know for sure. So, but I learned a lot, and I was like, well, let me see going on my own. And I didn't want to hire a coach and pay, it's expensive, if I wasn't going to compete. So I decided to go on my own, and I, from, taking what I've learned from him and things I've learned and, combining, doing my own thing, I've done really well. So, I probably, if I do compete again, I'll probably just self-coach. Because I did a cut this summer, and actually I got leaner than I was the prior year. So I think I can do it. My fear is always like that peak week thing is always kind of scary, but I've done it before, but yeah. So but it was a good experience, and I definitely get why people hire coaches. I always never really understood it until I did it, and it was like, it's just that. Okay, you don't have to think about anything. Here they give you the plan, you do this, you execute. Execution has never been a problem of mine. It's just always like, okay, what do I do? So, but that 2 years, it was a good experience of learning a lot, learning from my body, learning, just, the whole, like I said, meal plan. I had never measured my food, weighed my food out. Like that was a big game changer for me. But yeah, so definitely a good experience on that.
I think the hardest part for a lot of people, and me included, when you don't have somebody that's kind of giving you a plan, and I have some knowledge and just a general, I have exercise science degree, so I kind of have some general knowledge to go off of and things like that. But for me, it's the struggle is sticking to a plan and not switching it up.
When I knew I had to check in with a coach every week, the pictures, I'm like, okay, yeah. And so I can after I stopped having the coach, I still do my progress pictures for myself every week. I still do the same thing, and I check in with myself every week. Every Saturday morning, I do my pictures and analyze them, compare. So I've continued to do that. So, but yeah, it's just and the biggest thing is just that accountability. Yeah, when you know you've got to check in with somebody, it's like, okay, I've got to toe the line, and get into somebody. So yeah.
I'm somebody who has like 10 million things that they want to do and that directions they want to go in. So I'm like, oh, this week I want to do this. Next week I'm probably going to want to do that. But these last several months, just sticking to something, it's in doing it in like a real regimented, planned way. It's really the first time I've ever done that, and it's just it makes it so much easier.
It is. Once you get used to it, it's so much easier. I'm just a very regimented, organized person, and it's kind of funny because, like I said, my son is autistic, and that's a kind of a common trait of people with autism. Like, they have their routine and everything, and I'm like, I strive on that anyhow. So it's like, so that's just something I'm used to. That's our lifestyle. We have to kind of have a routine and everything. So, so it just fits into my personality and everything to do this. So, but that makes it easier when it's just a repetition and keeping doing it. And, there's a lot of people like the off one, just, you're never going to be successful at that.
Right.
So, and then like the whole, okay, I'm doing what I want, all year. And then like, a few months out from a show, okay, now I'm going to get strict. And like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's just, my everything is pretty much the same year round, other than, I might, cut down, increase my calories a little bit, decrease my cardio changes. That's pretty much it. I kind of stay the same, eat the same types of foods and everything.
So moving forward, kind of looking into the future, what does the future hold for you as far as, this year, the next 5 years, not necessarily in just competing, but just being involved in bodybuilding in general?
And if you mentioned this before, and I thought it while you were speaking, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but I think there's a misconception of there's a sport of competitive bodybuilding, and then there's bodybuilding. You don't have to ever step on stage to be a bodybuilder. There's plenty of people that I know of that are tremendous bodybuilders that never compete. So competing doesn't mean that you're not a bodybuilder. So I will always be involved in bodybuilding as far as working out, training. I kind of like, I have an interest in doing some training, and I have done a little bit here and there. Some people have asked me, hey, can you train me? I actually really don't want to like prep people for shows. That's not my thing. I actually have had a few experiences like people who don't know anything about working out. I actually love to do that. Like, get somebody who's never worked out in their life and like show them the ropes. I love doing that. And I would love to have the opportunity to do that more often. So I'm always kind of like teeter-toed, like, should I go, do the, get my personal training certification kind of thing, or not, I don't know. But I will, I don't foresee myself ever not being in the gym. Now, fortunately, we have a really nice equipped home gym, and then, I go to a commercial gym, but I don't see myself ever like not doing some sort of realm of bodybuilding, working out, staying with the nutrition, and hopefully, who knows, like with my son, I don't know if he'll get into it, have interest in fitness or whatever. I don't know, but he's been around it his whole life, so I don't know. But yeah, I just my thing is, whether I step on stage or not, just work on that continuous improvement. Still, challenging myself and trying to always be the best me I can be, and see where it takes me.
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool journey to be on. We're always working on yourself. I don't think enough people embrace that, understand that you can just work on you. Like, you don't, as much time as you do put into your job, your career, you can still work on you and self-improvement or self-help, whatever you call it. But
and being, I think, being your best self, and being happy and content with yourself, and, and liking what you see in the mirror, and, feeling good and healthy, that just translates into every other aspect of your life. And it helps you help other people. And, like I said, my number one job is being a mom and a wife. And, I always tried to be the best of those that I can be as well, but I think this, if you try, one aspect, they translate into everything.
Absolutely agree. It's the, what's the saying about how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm a very firm believer in, like, you know, the power of positivity and positive thinking and manifesting. I work on my son. Like I said, it's struggle because, you know, I don't know what level he understands, but I always try to explain to him that, you know, how your day goes is your decision, actually. So, you know, if you want to have a great day, you can choose to have a great day. You know, it's how you react to things. Not that everything's around you, you can control what happens, but your attitude toward it can't control it. You know, or you can choose to have a rotten day. You can choose to have a great day. It's just your decision. So I always try to choose to be joyful and, you know, have a great day. So I think one time I heard it a long time ago, and I used to actually, I used to have this on my tag on my email. Instead of saying, you know, telling people have a great day, say make it a great day. So
yeah, I like that. That's a good kind of thing to say. Other than that, though, it's been really good getting to talk to you. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing about your journey and bodybuilding and all that kind of stuff. It was really good to finally get to chat.
Okay, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.